know that you cannot cover everything. What is the priority? So does it mean, it means that sometimes maybe I take one vacation less so that I hire somebody else, right? That I have the funds to hire someone, or I can cover some of the expenses of the business. So you figure out what you need to do, right? And you figure out what your priority is. The priority has to be the business for a while, until you get it to a place where you can also sustain yourself and your lifestyle.
Hi, I'm Anna Dimichik. This is Laws of Achievement, and I'm talking today to Sumaiya Khalique. Sumaiya is an owner of an immigration law firm in downtown Manhattan. She is also an immigrant from Bangladesh, and today I get to ask her questions how she made her way from being an immigrant to owning a business. Hi, Sumaiya. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here, and I can't wait to get started.
Let's get started then. So, tell me, how did you come to the United States, and what were your first years here like?
Sure. So I came here when I was very young, I think about 4 years old or so. My dad actually petitioned for us. So he petitioned for my mom and my sister and me, and we came here when we were very young. And I grew up on Orchard Street in Lower East Side of Manhattan, which, as you may or may not know, is historically known as the hub for immigration during the 1800s. So, growing up in this neighborhood with this diverse background of people, it was a very interesting background. And I think that kind of gave me a really great appreciation for where I am now today as an immigration attorney and working with people from all different backgrounds.
Right. And what were the biggest challenges for you growing up here in the States?
Sure. So there are a variety of challenges. And I think as a child, of course, the first thing is adjusting, right? And I came in when I was slightly young and still had some memories and understandings of another culture. So learning the American culture, being able to speak English. We had some lessons in English because we had an English tutor, but it was still not the same as coming to this country and having to speak English all the time. And then, of course, the way you dressed, adjusting to that, the food, even. So there are a variety of different things that, your family was not familiar with because you grow up with a different way. But then you go to school and you have friends from different backgrounds who are growing up here, and you had to learn how to navigate and figure out like what it means to be an American.
And for you, how did you understand what it means to be an American back then?
I don't think I had an understanding at a back then, really, of what it meant to be an American. I think my perception was that to be American, you had to dress a particular way. So in my
Hmm.
culture, where girls mostly wear dresses, and you dress pretty conservatively or modestly, wearing pants and jeans, like that was an American identity, right? T-shirts and pants, as opposed to like a dress. That's being a little bit more American. Eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as opposed to eating rice and something and curry, right? And I think there are other things like we weren't allowed to stay over at friends' houses. In our culture, you just didn't do that. And I don't know if it's for safety reasons or whatever reasons, but it wasn't something that you did often, right? And so I think that when I saw my friends being able to do certain things, going to certain events, etc., it made me think that to be American, these are things that I would like to do.
And so you're mentioning in your culture you were not really allowed to do certain things. Is that common for everyone in your culture, or is just specifically for the girls?
Okay, so I think part of it is common to the culture, but it's more so because I was a girl, right? So there are different standards that are applied to girls than there are to boys. And my culture, and particularly my family, they're a little bit more conservative. So women, the notion in traditional cultures is women kind of stay inside, right? Women are indoors, it's more private sphere, etc. So as a girl, I think that your parents really wanted to protect you and made sure that you maintained a certain lifestyle in a certain environment. And that's very different than the American culture, where both boys and girls are allowed to explore certain things. And that's not to say that even within American culture sometimes women don't have certain I don't know if the word is like limitations or whatnot placed on them. That's just certainly true. But I think in cultures like mine, it's more pronounced. And I think that I realized that as I grew up, how different it was and how it was so much more pronounced than, let's say, women growing up here as opposed to a women in Bangladesh or a Bengali woman growing up in the United States.
So, did this difference in upbringing impact your life going forward? Did it impact your choice of education? Did it impact just how you saw yourself growing up and then getting on in life?
Oh my gosh, Anna, 100%.
Hmm.
I think coming from a very conservative household, so not only do I come from a culture that has particular roles for boys and girls and men and women, but my family is more conservative. My grandfather is an imam, right, which is like a religious leader. My family, most of my family, they're very, very conservative about certain things. So when I grew up here, and all of a sudden I have all these options that, let's say, my mom and her sisters didn't have, and I'm exposed to other cultures and an American culture where women can think about a different kind of life for them. It really affected me, especially in my decisions for the future and how I wanted to shape my life in my culture. And this is, I think, common to many other cultures. You get married very, very young, right? And then
Hmm.
education is important, but the marriage prioritizes education and any achievements and or career goals that you may have. And I think that was a driving force for me. I remember when I was graduating from college, it was a big preoccupation for me, like, oh my gosh, I have to get myself into grad school soon. I can't take too much time off. My parents are not going to let me sit around for 3 4 years and then I can say to them, I'm
Unmarried.
going to go to school. Yeah, because immediately they're going to be like, what are you doing? Get married. And this was an actual thing for me. I did have to fight with my parents to say, I'm not getting married at this time, because as soon as I was in my 20s and about to graduate from college, that was the question, right? And they felt that was their responsibility to see that I would get married as the next step in my life. But for me, I felt that I was too young. I felt like my other friends and colleagues, I was like, why? How come they don't have to think about this right now? They can go explore different career paths, they can hold off on going to grad school. But for me, I knew that if this is what I wanted, if I wanted a career, if I wanted to go to law school, I couldn't wait around and I had to do it then and there. So I consciously made that choice and I had to have a conversation with my parents and I really had to assert myself. I remember in that period to say, I am not doing that. I'm not ready to do that. It's not something I want to do. Instead, I want to pursue a career.
How did they accept it?
Well, it was tough. I give my parents a lot of credit because I think they've come a long way. One of the other things, your earlier question, right, about how the cultural perceptions affected me growing up, I went to an all women's college. And
Hmm.
I think, sometimes people might think, like, did you go to all women's college because of your culture, so that in my culture men and women are usually separated, there isn't too much interaction, at least back in the day. Now it's a little bit different. But the funny thing is, this women's college, just like Barnard, right? They are known for turning out independent women. They're known for encouraging women to be like leaders, to pursue careers. And it's not that the education teaches you to put aside your personal aspirations, or that is not equally important if you decide you want to have a family or get married. But I think that is particularly focused on giving women the options and encouraging them to pursue a career. So, first, getting my parents to agree to that, they were okay with it because it was a good education, etc. But I don't think, because particularly my dad realized the impact it would have on me, on my career goals. And it was only after I graduated that they realized, oh my God, like she isn't joking about this. She's like really
Hmm.
serious that she wants to do this. And I think for them and for many immigrant families, the pressure in accepting how your kids are growing up differently from your own culture, it comes from their own expectations of themselves and the pressures they feel from their friends and community to raise their kids to be the way they were traditionally raised. So I think my parents felt a lot of pressure from other people to raise us in
Mm.
a particular way. And then they had to kind of take a stand and say, we're going to let our kids explore growing up in the United States and pursue the options that they have. So it was definitely a challenge, but I am very appreciative of my parents for ultimately being supportive and open-minded, and allowing me and encouraging me to go for it and do it.
So your parents had to take a stand against their community essentially and say, no, our kids get to do what they need to do.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they feel it now. I think it could be worse, but they have like friends and family where like all their kids are like married, etc. And then, there's me who is not very traditional in a number of different ways. And I think that as a parent, you have to kind of make that decision when you come to this country, right? And you're leaving behind your culture and your traditions. Are you going to allow your kids to benefit from the opportunities they have in a new country? I understand the desire to preserve the culture that you come from, but I really think that if you're immigrating, you have to be open to your children having different opinions, a different desire in the way that they want to live their lives.
It's interesting how your experience somewhat resonates with mine because I grew up in Russia. It's also somewhat a more conservative culture than American culture here. And it was, I was never pressured into marrying. Nobody
Yeah,
ever said, oh, by 23, you have to be married and like, have
yeah,
two
yeah,
children or something. Right. So there was no such pressure. But still, basically, in the decisions my parents were making for me as I was growing up, it was sort of a pattern that it was an understanding that most likely I will marry in my 20s and have kids.
yeah,
And so any career prospects, they would need to be sort of working with that other goal, right? And so
yeah,
no extremely involved majors, no majors that would be supposedly taking me away from home for too long on business trips or anything like this. Right. So it was, I would not say it was unspoken, it was discussed, but at the same time, yeah, when I was in my 20s, they did not pressure me at all. And I definitely appreciate that.
yeah. I think that a lot of our cultures that are similar, right? A lot of our
Hmm.
cultures are similar if you are growing up in a society that has particular roles for men and women. Even if
Hmm.
certain things aren't explicitly stated as like at this age you must have a child or at this age you must be married by, there are expectations and it's there circling around you, and you are aware of that, right? And you know that. You mentioned that there are certain careers that you considered over others because you had to factor in how it would impact your lifestyle, let's say if you were to get married or have a family. And it was kind of the same for me as well growing up. There were certain careers that we knew were okay, right? You could be a doctor, you could be a teacher, but it wasn't necessarily the case that parents were encouraging their daughters to be lawyers or engineers. Those were seen career paths for their sons. Now, of course, it's changed quite a bit. A lot more women are going into these career paths. But back in the day, you just kind of knew that that wasn't something that you were encouraged to do. And I just think it's so interesting. And honestly, if I could go back in time, I wish that my parents had encouraged me to look into engineering, and so because my brother is an engineer, and I see how his career path is different. And I think to myself, it's not like law school was less difficult. And at that time, I thought that my mindset, I would not be able to do something like engineering. And I don't know if that was influenced by my culture and background, where women are viewed as being more particularly inclined in like liberal arts and certain things as opposed to STEM areas. But now that I think about it, if I had grown up with that kind of encouragement and society had told me that I am also capable of pursuing engineering or some other STEM field, maybe I would go and do that. And who knows, maybe I would be great at it. We just don't know. So I think that it's really important that when you are coming to this country, not only do you have to adjust, right, to the way you live, dress, etc., whatnot, but it's also the mindset. If you are coming here to give your kids a better future, and particularly like education, then I think you have to also encourage them to pursue things that you wouldn't want them to pursue in back home.
It's really interesting how you never know if you have a natural inclination to certain things, if
Right,
you're
right.
not really
Yeah,
encouraged to do
yeah.
them, right, as a
Yeah.
child. Because for me, I had a similar experience with math, for example. I was never good at math, and my parents never encouraged me to try harder, to try more, the way they encouraged me to study history or to study foreign languages. Right? If I was not doing so well in foreign languages, they would say, no, you really have to get it. Like, you have to know it. You try again and try again and try again. And so you try again and you get better. Right? But with math, it was the other way around. It's like, oh, I'm not getting this. And I was like, it's math. You're not going to get it anyway. So forget it. Right? And in a few years, you're way behind other kids who were actually encouraged to try harder. Yeah.
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 Oh my gosh, Anna, it's so interesting that you also had this kind of experience as well, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and recently I was thinking to myself, I currently work with a lot of scientists and people with science backgrounds. I'm working on a case for a scientist in the pharmaceutical industry, another case for like a nuclear physicist. And,
Hmm.
it took me some time to kind of understand the work that they were doing. But it was amazing because I'm like, I understand this and it's interesting.
Hmm.
However, I remember when I was younger, I didn't like the sciences. They weren't my favorite subjects. I struggled with them. And I wonder now if my mindset had been different and I had been taught, look, you just look at this in a different way. It's not that you can't do it. You just have to, think about it in a different way, maybe put in a little bit more effort or etc. Then you can 100% understand it. Maybe I would have a different relationship with these, subjects, but I don't.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting to think and reflect on that right now.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Did you know that you wanted to become a lawyer, or what led you to becoming a lawyer?
No, I did not know I wanted to become
Yeah,
a lawyer. It was not even, it was not a thing when I was
yeah,
growing up at all.
yeah.
The profession, I don't know if profession even existed in Russia
Right,
when I
right.
was growing up.
Oh,
Yeah, I only learned
really?
about it. Yeah. No,
Wait, the
there were no
profession
lawyer
in
shows.
general for lawyers or for women?
Yeah. For lawyers in general, I don't think it was a thing.
Yeah,
At all. I'm not sure. Maybe it was and I didn't know,
yeah,
so it shows you, right?
yeah.
No, but I went into law because I realized I did not really want to be a historian all my life. I enjoyed study history, but as far as working in history and developing like studies and writing research papers, I did not like that. So I thought I wanted to have something more related to every day and more to do with people. And I was always very bad at math, like I mentioned. So business school was kind of out of question, and so that left me with the law. And there we are.
So wait, why was business school out of the question? Just because of the math?
Yes, because of the math. I realized it would take me
Yeah.
years just to catch up
Ah,
to where I would be
right.
able to take a GMAT or something like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's so funny you say that because I also ruled out business school. And
Mm.
for me at the time I thought I don't think I have the temperament. I don't think I have the personality to be in business school or run my own business. And it's funny because here both of us are kind of running
Running a
our own
business. Yes.
businesses, right? Even though we didn't go to business school. I think when I started my practice, I had this mindset also, like I'm a lawyer, I'm not really a business person. And once I shifted that mindset, I was able to figure out certain business practices, et cetera, whatnot. I think the common theme that I'm kind of seeing here between our conversation is just the influence of looking at things a particular way, right? And just how you think about what your options are and your abilities are. And the second you think that you can do something, it changes everything, right?
Right. You go and start doing it, and you work it out step by step, of
Yeah.
course. But you mentioned once you decided you could be a businesswoman and you decided to open your own practice. Can you tell me more about how that happened? Why did you even decide to open your own practice?
Sure. So it wasn't something I knew that I was going to do. I was working at another law firm, and I was really happy there, and I enjoyed the caseload that I was doing, that I had. And I think it was because I was like, working in this law firm where I had tremendous responsibility over the caseload, and also developing a new department, particularly focusing on business employment visas, and also managing the team. It kind of started to give me an idea of what it would be like to run my own thing. And I think it was just a natural course of the responsibilities that I had over there that I started thinking about running my own practice, because I was kind of already starting to do it. And I also thought to myself, I need something more. I want to like challenge myself. And more than anything, I wanted to have a certain level of autonomy in the way that I worked, my hours, who I worked with, and the type of cases that I had. And I think even early on, I started thinking about my future and kind of the future that the lifestyle that I would want to have. And I think it's very different when you work for someone else versus when you work for yourself. And you don't realize until you work for yourself all the different avenues that open up and the ways that you grow, right? So I think it was just a natural progression of having these responsibilities and seeing that I could take it to the next thing. If I had worked at a different law firm, like maybe it was a larger law, this was I guess a small law, a boutique law firm. If I had worked at a larger law firm, or maybe in a different area of law, maybe I would have stayed in private practice working for someone else longer. But I'm always thankful that my experience was what it was. And when I go back and reflect on the first few years of creating this practice, I have to say it wasn't easy. It was a journey. No one tells you the transition and working for someone else to going and working for yourself until you go and you actually do it.
Yeah, see, when I was starting out, I was actually really scared because I knew that most new businesses fail. Like I had that in the back of my mind. So I expected it to be really scary and really difficult. What were the main challenges for you in the first couple of years?
Sure. For me too, it was also very scary as well. And not only that businesses fail, but also, people didn't think I could do it, right? I did have people say to me, "Why are you leaving your job? It's much more secure to work for someone else than to go work for yourself." And I had some people who thought I was too young to go and do that. But I felt that I was in a place in my life and also in my career where I had enough experience and I had the time and availability to go and do it. I think the main challenges for me in the first few years was really not having guidance, right? I was the first one in my
Hmm.
family, not just to go to, I mean, not just to open up my own law practice, but to go to law school. Growing up here in the United States and being a professional at that level, I was the first one in my family to do that. So, not having guidance, part of it is also support. I didn't know where to get the kind of support that I needed. And I'm grateful for my family supporting me in other ways, but it wasn't like they could give me advice on how to run a law practice. Another issue, of course, was resources. I was working with limited resources. And I think that that is a big factor. If you have the resources to fund your law firm, to hire help, to get certain things that you need for your law firm, it definitely helps in growing the practice. And then, of course, getting clients, that was also another challenge as well, because people didn't know who you were outside of the law firm that you worked at. So there were a variety of different challenges. And I think it's really that shift from being an attorney to now realizing you are running a business, and how do you run a business, and what are the different things that you need to do that. So these were just a couple of the challenges the first few years.
Now, resources is definitely resources is a big one for sure. Because when you're just a new business, you're starting out, the banks are not rushing to loan you money. They're not offering you those nice lines of credits. Right. No, you're figuring out, you're scrambling how to buy a computer and how to pay your license fees and all of that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
it's not like, I could say to my parents or someone, please give me a loan or whatnot, or please
Right.
help me set this up. I really had to do it myself on a limited budget. And, Anna, I think what I want to say to people is you can do it, and it will be easier if you have more resources when you start. It is more challenging when you don't, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I think you have to be prepared for it to be difficult. Just like you were saying that you knew that in the back of your mind that businesses fail and that was kind of pushing you. For me too, I mean, I knew that of course, it would have been more ideal if I had more funds, more resources, and other things when I started my practice. Like if I were to go off and start my practice now, it would be so much smoother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with being out there in the field with more experience. But I think you take the experience as it comes. And I think because I started it then, I'm very proud of being able to overcome those challenges. And I think it really taught me how to be resilient. It taught me how to take a step back so I could take two steps forward, how to cut back on certain things so I could have more resources for other things. And as difficult and as challenging as those first few years were, now that they're behind me, I'm very grateful for that because I have this experience that I would never have had if I had stayed working at the law firm that I was in.
Right. And so you were mentioning you had to cut back on certain things. Could you go into more details about that?
Sure, it's very different when you have a salary, right? That you know that you're getting
Mm-hmm.
paid every 2 weeks or whenever it is, versus you're working for yourself and you don't know, when you're getting the next client and when your funds are
Mm-hmm.
coming in. So, one of the decisions I made when I started my practice was to move back in with my parents. And that was a change and it was a challenge, to having your own space, to go back at a certain age. I mean, I was in my late 20s to go back and live with my parents. And that was
Mm-hmm.
tough. And I had to do it for a while. But I think that without that, I would have definitely have been struggling a bit more. And that really allowed me to use my income to grow my business instead of also spending that on rent and covering my living expenses. So that's one way in cutting back. And I think also my personal life, I think this is a skill that I've learned how to do now, that you know that you cannot cover everything. What is the priority? So does it mean, I mean, it means that sometimes maybe I take one vacation less so that I hire somebody else, right? That I have the funds to hire someone, or I can cover some of the expenses of the business. So you figure out what you need to do, right? And you figure out what your priority is. The priority has to be the business for a while, until you get it to a place where you can also sustain yourself and your lifestyle.
Very true, very true. It takes a lot of sacrifices,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
including downsizing your living standards and also
Yeah.
not taking a vacation, not taking a day off, or maybe
Right.
on a weekend, even if you
Hmm.
plan to rest, just going
Yeah.
out and doing jail visits,
Yeah,
right?
I
So you,
know. Yeah. I see your jail, your videos about your jail visits all the time. And how
yeah.
often do you find yourself working on Saturdays and Sundays?
So now that my law firm is much bigger,
Yeah.
I don't do jail visits on Saturday and Sundays
Yeah.
that frequently. You know, I
Yeah.
usually end up doing them when it's a holiday and most of my employees took time off.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel
Yeah.
that I owe them that, let them take their
Right.
time off and enjoy
Yeah.
holidays with their families. So, and at the same time, usually what happens around the holidays is people get in trouble a lot more. People get
Right. Right.
arrested a lot more. So
Yeah.
we end up with a lot of business and fewer lawyers. So I end up having to go out and take care of the cases. So nowadays, most of my work on the weekends is really just studying case law, catching up on legal developments, or maybe writing something, just doing I think it's called deep work now, where you concentrate and you do this. But when I just started out the law firm, that was a whole different story because not only did I work on weekends, but also I did a lot of night court, right? And for those who don't know, New York has night court, which goes literally until 2 in the morning, because in New York you have a constitutional right to be brought before the judge within 24 hours. So yes, courts basically work around the clock.
Hmm.
And it was also, I did not have many colleagues.
Yeah.
At some point, I only had one other attorney working with me, and I
Yeah.
could not really get him to go off after every case. And at the same time, you also need every case that comes through the door.
Right.
So, yeah, several times a week, I would be out there until like 1 or 2 in the morning and then go into court in the morning again.
Yeah.
So that was the life.
Yeah, and I think, Anna, you perfectly described the lifestyle of an attorney, especially running their own practice, that many people don't know about, the non-glamorous like lifestyle, right? Because I think the media creates an image of like lawyers just kind of like sitting around, and then maybe they work for an hour or two, and then they just
Sipping
somehow win all
cocktails,
these,
yeah.
yeah, they just win all these big cases without ever doing any work. But in the
Right.
real world, it's not like that. And just like you, and even now to this day, like weekends are spent like preparing for the week, or staying on top of the law, or learning about, different areas in the law, so that we are knowledgeable about our area of practice. And also when you are your own boss, or you have your own practice, like you're checking emails at like midnight, even though you shouldn't. I mean, now
Hmm.
I'm better about that, but you're constantly working. And even though you do have more control over your schedule, on the other hand, you're never, off duty.
Right.
You're always on the job. Yeah.
Right. So how do you stay organized on a daily basis?
So, I mean, I have quite a few different systems in place. For me, I can't function if things aren't organized. And this even plays into my home. Like, I need to have a clean home. Otherwise, I
Hmm.
feel like I can't think straight. And my desk
So
needs to
important.
be clean. Yeah. Otherwise, it really affects my thinking. And I just need a clean slate. I think that your physical environment can impact your mental state. And if my physical
Absolutely.
environment is cluttered, if files are all over and things are not where they're meant to be, it makes it difficult for me in my mind to concentrate on what I need to do. Like things have their place and they need to go there. So, in terms of our practice, we definitely have certain programs that help us. I utilize a case management program. We also use a task management program. Like this is the only way to stay organized, especially if you have a team. I spend my evenings and my mornings allocating tasks, making sure that things are being checked off as they're getting done. There's a system in place to ensure that people are on top of the projects that they need to do, who's assigned to what, etc., and to ensure that we can see all the things that they need to get done are getting done. So that's one way. Then I also have a team that has certain responsibilities to make sure that we're not missing appointments, we're following up with clients, we're responding to emails in time. So almost every aspect, even our phone calls, everything is logged to all our leads. We
Hmm.
have notes for everything so we can keep track of who's calling, who's not calling. And all of that wasn't built from in one day. It took some time to get to this point. We even have an extensive manual in place for when we onboard people. So that was very, very important for me. As I grew, I realized I need to systemize things. I need to have um, processes in place, because that's the only way that you can delegate and you can focus on other things. So these are just a few examples of organization. And of course, everything we have copied and scanned is alphabetized and saved by client names, etc. You have to make
Hmm.
the time to organize things, because if you don't, it's just not possible. I had this assistant, and one time I was looking at her computer, and she had like, I don't know, on your desktop, like you can have a couple of folders. I think she had
Yeah.
like 50 folders, and I was like, I can't look at this.
This is not okay.
Every time I look at your computer, I feel like my mind, like, so I told her, can you please organize this? And then like it was just amazing. It was like beautiful when she like organized it, because I can't handle it. Like things need to be organized by names, like dates,
Hmm.
whatever it is. What about you? How do you incorporate your organization into being an attorney and running your practice?
Well, for me, weekends is when some of it really happens. The work week essentially starts on Sunday early afternoon. That's when I usually sit down and do all my organizing for the upcoming week, and also possibly like looking out for a month out there. Yeah, so that's when I distribute the tasks. I go take a look at some older cases that might need like some revamping, that might need touch ups. Yeah, so the week really starts Sunday night, so that on
Yeah.
Monday morning I already have lists for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, yeah, so
Yeah.
do you do the
Yes.
same thing?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunday nights, that's when I look at everything. I take care of what needs to be done. Because you're right, when Monday starts at 9 o'clock, you cannot spend 3 hours in
Mm-hmm.
that morning organizing. That needs to be done the night before. And I think one of the things you learn as any business owner, I think, is that all the extra work that you have to do ahead of time, you cannot wait for the workday to start to do
Yeah.
these things. You have to do those things ahead of time, and it really does set you up for a successful week if you take those extra few hours on a Sunday to do it, or in the evening for the following day. One of the things I learned is that my team originally, when I first had other people start doing work, they were doing things, but then the work was piling up in terms of me reviewing
Mm.
it. And
Hmm.
one of the things I do now is I realize I have to review things instantly. I can't
Yeah.
let too much time pass, because then they're just waiting for to send these things out until I approve them or have finished reviewing them. So that's just another way of like extra work that you have to do as the attorney or as the business owner to make sure that your law firm is running smoothly and things are getting done.
Yeah, and you probably don't get it as much as I do in immigration practice because I remember that also not being the case. But now that I do more criminal defense, I realize that I can't really count on the time during the week to be my time and to go as scheduled and as planned, because in the criminal defense you always get those sudden cases. Someone get arrested, right? They're calling you. You have to go to court right now, or you have to do a jail visit right now, or you have to get to the scene of the accident, right? So even if I'm planning, oh, I'm going to sit down on like Tuesday morning to do XYZ, you know what? Tuesday morning, I might be spending it in court on some
Hmm.
urgent
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is a bit more in criminal court. In immigration, I don't have cases randomly coming up, or where I need to go
Right.
to court randomly
It's
as much.
usually scheduled.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but I do see that too now, where it's like I have to meet with my team. I have to go over what they're doing. They need me to check on something, or a client is calling, and this is in addition to scheduled meetings that you have throughout the day. Or there's an emergency. The client did something, or somebody randomly got something from the court or USCIS that they need to respond to. And you're right. Like sometimes I'm like, the whole day goes by and it's not until the evening that I finally have time to send out an email that I need to send out, or do some admin paperwork that I need to do, or do some actual legal writing, because you just don't have time during the day to do it. And I think this is the case when you are also supervising other people. Your time is given to them. So it's also almost at the point now where sometimes I'm like, I want to just give everybody off so nobody asks me any questions. There's no one I
Yep.
need to meet with, and I can just sit there for 2, 3 hours and just do what I need to do.
I wanted to also go back real quick and talk about
Yeah,
the perception of lawyers, because
yeah,
I remember you touched based on it a little bit, right?
yeah,
That lawyers are seen as those chill creatures who just drink cocktails out there,
yeah.
right? Is there anything else that you see in the perception of lawyers that I guess you find curious, interesting, unsettling?
Sure. I think, our experiences are so much shaped by our identities, right? Whether that's our race, our religion, our gender, our age, all of these things like factor in. Um, well, I mean, let me go backtrack a little bit in terms of
Hmm.
like what I imagined a lawyer to be and other people imagine lawyers to be. They are very glamorized, right? Like living these glamorous lifestyles. For sure, that's not always the case. Perhaps when you reach a certain point in your career, you can have that kind of lifestyle, but you don't just graduate from law school and live this fabulous life, right? The other thing, too, I remember when I was younger, I always thought a lawyer is someone who's wearing a suit. And that was something that I perceived to be a part of the industry. And when I first started, I felt like I had to always wear a suit. And I remember as an intern, I made it a point to always wear a suit every single day to my internship, because I wanted to be taken like a serious lawyer. And now that I've been practicing for quite a while, I think it's almost like 11 years or so, now I couldn't care less if I wear a suit or not. And I really don't like wearing a suit. And it doesn't bother me that I meet with clients, unless I have to go to court, that I'm not wearing a suit. And in fact, I think sometimes my clients like it. And I think the perception of the way a lawyer should be, the way a lawyer should look like and dress, etc., has shifted a bit. The way you dress is definitely a component of our industry, right? We are expected to dress a certain way. I think it's changed a little bit now, maybe outside of the court, etc. It could be a little less formal in the sense you don't have to wear a suit all the time, although you do have to maintain a professional appearance. I think the other thing is the idea of lawyers predominantly being men and being older,
Hmm.
especially in particular cultures. They're surprised that a lawyer can be a young woman. And I think that's something that I had to deal a lot with when I was starting off. And even now, today, sometimes I have clients come to me and I laugh because I know what they're thinking, especially if it's a client that's, a bit more at a certain age. I have had clients even make comments, "Oh, you're a young lawyer," and you have to almost like establish to them, don't worry, my age
Yeah.
doesn't mean I don't know how to do my job. So I think, it's really interesting the way people think lawyers are, and also personality. I
Oh yeah.
myself thought that as a lawyer, I had to be like very, very serious, and, I can't laugh or joke or etc. And to some extent, I am a bit more serious. I mean, it's just my natural personality, how I am. But I also have a ridiculous personality, and I'm not sitting there always being like deadly serious. Like, like I am a social person. I enjoy being around people. So I think that, when you are a lawyer, you realize that you have to work with all of these different perceptions that people have of what a lawyer
Yeah.
should be like. And you have to either like embrace them and deliver to them what they expect the lawyer to be, or you kind of just have to own who you are and, get the clients that will appreciate that and welcome that.
hmm No, I very much agree. The perception of lawyers, the image is so glamorized. I get random people whom I just meet asking me how I like flying private. And then my jaw
Yeah.
drops. I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah, yeah,
What? I was like, but
yeah.
I thought lawyers always fly private. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's not really the case.
No, no,
All
it's
right.
not. It's not. I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah. The funniest thing for me always is when you watch these law TV shows and movies, how the lawyer never does anything, and they just
Just sits
win
and
the
talks.
case. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you go into court and you deliver this, passion speech, and it's just everybody's like crying and in tears, and they win the case, but they don't realize that in real life it's not like that. And I'm not sure. I mean, maybe this is what you find as well, but for me, and definitely in immigration, it's not like that. There are years of waiting. They're very
Mm-hmm.
unglamorous, court appearances. You're waiting.
Continuances, right? You show up and it's continued.
Yeah, and the courts are also not that glamorous. So I think it's very different the way the legal profession is uh, demonstrated or portrayed to be to the world versus what it really is
Mm-hmm.
like in real life.
I also noticed that sometimes people attribute certain characteristics that they think are common to lawyers to you as a person. And occasionally, I even ran into instances of being discriminated against. For example, I remember a few years ago, I was trying to rent an apartment in New York, and I was told that the owner does not want to rent to lawyers. It's
Okay, why?
flat out. Well, I don't know. I did not go exploring the topic because
Right,
it's the
right.
realtor told me that the
Yeah.
owner does not want to rent to lawyers. But I guess a lot of people just assume that if you're a lawyer, you're extremely litigious and you're going to run to court and sue them over every little thing, which is really not necessarily true, right?
No, that's not necessarily true. That's not the case at all. Yeah, it could work against you sometimes if people know that you're
Mm-hmm.
a lawyer. There's also the lawyer tax, right? The second that sometimes people find out that you're a lawyer. I remember one time I was shopping and it was one of the in this South Asian community, and a lot of these places there isn't a fixed price. You kind of like bargain or
Mm.
whatever it is, right? And then the second I was with someone else, and unfortunately they disclosed that I was a lawyer. The second they disclosed I was a lawyer, the guy charged me for the clothes like two times what they wear, and I was like,
Oh
dude,
my God.
I know how much these things cost. He's like, but you are a lawyer. I'm like, just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I want to pay double, what the price is.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like the lawyer tax.
That's the first time I hear the phrase, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I can absolutely see it happening in
Yeah.
those communities.
Mhm.
So, this schedule, it's pretty grueling, right? Especially
Yeah.
with work on the weekends and during the day. Certainly, it takes physical toll on you as well.
Yeah.
So, do you have any kind of practices, anything you do to stay healthy and to have a lot of energy?
Sure. So one of the things I learned is I cannot work 7 days a week, and I cannot like be out and about 7 days a week and still think the next week I'm going to have the energy to do what I need to do. So one of the things that I do now is honestly I really minimize my social activity during the week.
Hmm.
I do very limited social activities during the week because it just cuts into my energy. So the week for me is to work, and then the evenings are for me to just unwind. I just like to watch something for like an hour or something mindless, or go do a workout, or sometimes draw, or just speak with a friend. So I need to use the evenings to decompress, and I cannot stay out too late, because if I do, my sleep is affected, and if I don't get the proper sleep, then I can't function the next day. So one of the things that I learned for myself is that in order for me to maintain the schedule that I have to get the proper sleep, and I need to have physical outlets to deal with the stress or whatever it is. So whether it's working out in the mornings, and now I've slightly changed my schedule to running in the evenings, like that really, really helps me. So you have to have some sort of like physical outlet to deal with the stress, to give you that burst of extra energy that you need. And I have found that, and before I didn't work out as consistently, but now I know that when I do get in a workout, it definitely helps me more through the
Mm-hmm.
day. I feel like it gives me more energy. It also helps me to deal with the stress of the job. The other thing that I do is I meal prep now. I never
Mm.
thought I would be that kind of person, but now I do. I spend my weekends, my Sundays usually, I'll meal prep for the week, so that I don't have to really worry. um, it's interesting how much things change. Before, I used to just eat out all the time, grab something for lunch, dinner, etc. And now I prefer home cooked meals, or just something, hearty, and something that gives me the energy that I need. So meal prepping has definitely helped me quite a bit, because it's one less thing that I need to worry about.
And it's also therapeutic, right? Like in a way, just all this chopping and cutting and cleaning. I find it therapeutic,
Yeah, me
right?
too. Recently, I started doing more of that, and now I'm like exploring new recipes. The other day, I made my own
Mm-hmm.
tomato sauce, and I was like, I don't need that canned like tomato sauce. I have fresh tomatoes and herbs, and it was actually really, really nice. So you start doing these things and kind of appreciating it. I also go on walks. Sometimes during a really particularly busy day, I have like meetings from like 9 to literally 5, 6, or whenever it is, and I have to just
Mm-hmm.
like take a 10-minute break. Like yesterday, I stepped out, I left the building for like 10, 15 minutes. I just walked around the block because I needed fresh air. Or I'll go get some water. So you learn that there are certain things you need to do to maintain the level of energy and focus that you need to get things done. And for me, like prayer and meditation, and particularly prayer, is
Mm-hmm.
something that's been really helpful for me. I don't share this with too many people, but anytime I have a hearing or like an important case or something, I always pray. And I
Mm.
don't know, like for me, that like really helps. Or like I have a difficult situation, because you need a belief in something else, whether you're a religious person or not. Sometimes you just need to believe, and have the hope, right, that things are going to go the way that they are going to go. And I think my religious background, it has really helped me in a lot of cases, particularly
Mm-hmm.
being able to pray in difficult times or when things are challenging, because the prayers give me the belief that things will be better, that I can do it, that this is a temporary setback or whatever it
Right.
is, and that allows me to overcome whatever it is that I need to overcome. And, related to belief, the other thing that I will say is, any person that has some sort of dream or wants to run their own business or anything, you need to believe in yourself. And I remember that I had this moment, like last year, when things that had been like really, really particularly challenging, and I was like almost ready to throw in the towel. And then I remember this vividly. Like I sat there, I had a moment, and I said to myself, Sumaya, do you believe in yourself? And I said, yes, like I believe in myself. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you, and you will be in so many different situations. And I think this is ongoing through our lives, where people doubt you, your team doubts you, your clients doubt you, you doubt yourself. But unless you believe in yourself, like you're not going to be able to overcome that. And I think that is so, so important. That belief in yourself and in your dream or whatever it is, it has to be so strong to like carry you through all of those difficult moments.
And so you're speaking about this belief in yourself, and I'm sitting here, I'm realizing, earlier I asked you about about your understanding of what it is to be an American, right? How did you develop it? And you said, oh, it was not really an understanding, it was just clothes and food. And I think this belief in yourself is possibly the one thing that you have as an American, because from what I know, in a lot of other cultures, you don't really get this message that you can really choose who you want to be, and you can be anyone you want, and you have to believe in yourself and work really hard, and you'll make it, right?
Yeah.
Because in a lot of
Yeah.
other countries,
Right. Right.
you have to follow something else. You have to follow
Right.
some predetermined paths. You often have to take opportunities that your parents give you,
Right.
because you're not going to make anything out of
Yeah.
yourself. But this belief that I believe in myself, and so I will make it work, I think
Yeah.
that's quintessential American.
You know what, Anna? You're 100% right. Right. That is the quintessential like American identity and dream, right? And what America is made out of, right? People coming here and creating a life, and because they think that they can have a different life, and they're willing to make the sacrifices, put in the time to get that life that they want and they need. That's such an excellent point, and it's true. So much of being an American, now that I'm older, and perhaps you see it this way too, it's different from when you're younger. Younger is outwardly appearance and physical
Hmm.
manifestations. When you're older, you realize it is the mindset, the way you think, etc. One is believing in yourself, to having the freedom to pursue
Having the
the things
freedom.
that you want to pursue. I think three also is just being open minded, and I think accepting of people from all different cultures and backgrounds, and realizing that we're all alike. And we all have the same fears, similar desires, and similar priorities. So, I think being American is really like how you view things and think about things.
Hmm. I agree. Wow. Well, Sumaya,
Yeah,
that was great.
yeah.
Wow, what amazing insights. Thank you so much for sharing your experience of building a business from the ground up and keeping it running. And thank you for sharing the inspiration.
Thank you, Anna, so much for having me. And it was really nice to learn about your own experiences and see all the similarities that we've had, despite coming from two different cultures and even practicing two different areas of law.
America does that to you, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right, Anna, this
Well,
was
thank you
wonderful.
so much.
Thank you.